First of all, I think it's really important to disclose that. Like really mentally prepare them of like, I always say, we're building the plane while we're flying it. You're hiring somebody to buy back your time and take on more of those lower level, like administrative or operational tasks. I think as a consumer, I also feel like my time is being valued because it's like I don't have to worry or think about what's happening next. Like it takes the mental load off of me.
As a systems person, I'm really curious your opinion on when you delegate to a human versus when you delegate to a system. Like, how do you determine when someone needs to hire a personal assistant to help them manage those things versus when you're going to build a system that helps them?
It's a great question. I feel like there's a handful of things that I take into account when thinking about that. So one is budget.
So you're saying if you have the budget, you should hire a person.
I think it depends on what your budget is and what you need from that person. Not necessarily that if you have the budget, you should hire, but just in general, what is the budget for this delegation? You know, because I mean, you're still going to oftentimes have like costs of tech or cost of investing in building a system. So there's definitely costs still involved, even if it's not a human. The biggest thing that I get is usually it's always going to be a combination of the two. It's never just one or the other, very rarely. But for my clients, they typically have a very high touch experience for their clients. So they never feel comfortable 100% delegating to just a system alone without any human oversight because there is a touch of nuance that's needed.
I actually think it's interesting because, you know, you're a systems person, right? You're a systems expert. And when I think about systems, sometimes my mind immediately goes to software. Versus in most in all businesses, they really should have systems for their people, whether that's software, whether it's a standard operating procedure.
That's why it's interesting because when you said system, I was like, well, what do you mean by that? Because everybody does mean different things. I think for me, you're always going to have a system no matter what, because it's just a sequence, whether it's a software, a tool, a way of doing work, a standardized. So if you're bringing in a person, you 100% need a system for them to follow to make sure that they're executing things at the level that you want. But we also want to leverage the tools that we have. We want to leverage, you know, AI. We want to be leveraging software, like you said. So it's usually always a hybrid. And it just depends on how much we're leveraging one or the other.
I actually saw Layla Hormozi gave an interview where they asked her about systems. And she said, a system is where you don't have to remember when or why or how something is going to get done. It's going to automatically trigger. And it's funny because I listen to that and I hear the word trigger. And I'm an automation person. My mind goes to automation, but it's people too, right? Like what triggers a person to do, you know, a regular check-in on how their clients are doing? Is it that they have to remember? And if they have to remember, then it sets them up to forget, oh, client number 11 hasn't been followed up with in 4 weeks. Like that's a big problem. But if you have a system, whether it's a software or a standard operating procedure, it could be either.
Yeah, absolutely. What about you? What about that same question for you of like, because you're coming in from a little bit more of that software perspective, right? On like, how do we maximize what we can get out of the software, out of the tools and to support the person. But I'm coming at it from a little bit of a different angle and you're coming at it from a different angle. So I'd be curious about your...
So talking about like when you delegate to a human versus delegating to a software or automation, I think the gold standard is always to have a human that you can delegate an entire process to.
I love that.
Now, that human, I hope, will be using software, will be using systems, AI, automation where appropriate. But if you are the founder, the owner of the business, and you have to keep in your brain that you are responsible for following up with clients 1 through 11 every single month, and you just have to make sure that your software is doing it, that your AI is doing it, like that doesn't take the cognitive load off of your plate. And that's why I think it's so important that when you have the budget, budget, like when you reach that stage where you can hire someone, I don't think the question is like, well, a software would be easier, AI would be easier or cheaper. If you have the budget, hire the person and then train the person to use the tools.
Yeah.
I think that's like the gold standard.
Yeah, I love that.
I think there's a big change coming, which is for a long time, people have thought, oh, AI is for people that are working in more technical environments. They have a more technical skill set, or AI is for engineers. And I have trained a lot of virtual assistants, office admins, EAs. I've trained chiefs of staff. I mean, AI is now for them too. And honestly, like if you, like right now, you can have an AI assistant that you talk to every single day. It's connected to all your tools and you never have to write a line of code. You don't have to see a line of code. You don't need to make back-end changes, and that AI can still be super powerful for you. So I think that's where AI is kind of moving to be more for the people versus for the engineers.
I love that. Yeah, it's always about going in and looking at the work. Like, where are you spending your time? What are you doing that could be done more efficiently? And it's oftentimes looking at those systems and how they're being underutilized as well.
Yeah.
And then again, just like you said, training the people, and this is how, making a few different tweaks, you know, something that's super simple. That it was funny because I think I take for granted that like everybody does the things a certain type of way, right? I was at an event and they were talking about using calendar links, using scheduling tools, and how so many people are still not adopting those, and they're going back and forth in emails. And then I thought there was a good balance of some people are still like very resistant to that for a lot of different reasons. And a good kind of compromise that I heard, which is like the assistant being like, hey, here's an option for next week. If this doesn't work, please check my calendar and find a good time that works for you. So it kind of was like a good balance. You know, those are coming in and there's a system for reminding you when work is getting done.
Well, and if you think about receptionists and what they're actually good at, they're the ones that connect with your customers first, right? They're the first ones to talk to your customers.
Yes.
They're building those relationships. They're good at talking to people. They're good personalities, probably. Like if you have a really good receptionist, then they're going to be the ones that your clients remember. And so if we give them a tool, like a scheduling tool, like Calendly, right? And now they can spend less time going back and forth via email and maybe spend more time following up with the client who hasn't responded to their last 3 emails, really learning more about them, or setting up the business owner to better understand that client next time that they have a meeting or something. You know, I think that there's going to be a reorganization of roles, and that human interaction is going to be more valuable than ever. So if you start off by expecting that Calendly is going to replace your receptionist, you're losing some really good expertise in your business.
Okay, so something that we just implemented recently with a client was, speaking of like scheduling, is an automated response when somebody reaches out. And
via email or
just
phone?
Anything. So if they reach out via Instagram, via WhatsApp, via email, inquiry on the website, it all goes in and triggers a response that somebody's going to be in touch with you soon, gets the ball rolling. Now, before, that was done manually. Now, instead of having to manually send out that welcome to every new person who is inquiring and reaching out, you can now immediately call them. It frees up so much of your time to have that human touch. And then you move them through the pipeline, and then each part of the pipeline triggers a different automation that just like helps things move faster, but it's still like one owner with that human touch, making sure everything's moving. So I think it's like,
I mean, I think everyone appreciates the system. Like if you pay someone money, I want to immediately be getting notifications. I want to get that communication. And so if the difference is, I have to wait 5 days for the business owner to reach out to me, I'm like, don't they have better things to do? So I think that those automations, like that automation along the customer journey, is so important because you want them to have a really good front end experience. They know it's automated, and that's okay. And it almost makes them, I think, realize that your time is very valuable.
I agree. I think as a consumer, I also feel like my time is being valued because it's like I don't have to worry or think about what's happening next. Like it takes the mental load off of me being like, oh, okay, thank you. You got my message. I'm so grateful to know that it didn't just go into the ethers when I submitted my form. Like you got it, you know?
Okay, great example, which is this designer, Sadie, that I worked with on my rebrand recently. Creative, right? Yes. She's in a creative space, and I think that there are a lot of people in the creative space that are very resistant to AI or automation. This designer, is a Zapier queen. Every step of the way, I got an automated email, automated forms. I have got a portal that houses all my things. And I think that is just such a good example of how you can use AI and automation to actually work more in the space that you like to work in and less in the rest of it. She's a design expert, so she's spending her time on the creative, on the design, and then all of the rest of the time can be automated. I think it's a great example of someone in a creative space really embracing automation.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be just pigeonholed like into specific types of businesses or techie businesses or online, or you can have the trades. I think is a great example. Like there's lots of ways that you can leverage systems and automation, which is kind of, I think, historically thought of as like being very in the field and not,
right,
techie at all, right? But there's so much you can do there.
Especially in trade, these business owners all the time, they're the plumber, they're the electrician, they're the contractor, and guess who picks up the phone when you call the number on their website? They do.
Yeah.
And I think that that's an area where there's so much benefit from automation because their time is so valuable. I've seen people implement AI receptionists in those kinds of businesses, which I think are good. I mean, if you're not picking up the phone or if you're missing deals because you don't have someone to pick up the phone, get an AI receptionist, but don't make that the gold standard.
So wrapping this all up in a nice bow, what do you feel like is the takeaway for people with delegating to a system versus a human? I feel like when you said about the gold standard of like getting your system super dialed in, but then training the human to like oversee and run that system is kind of like the gold standard. Yeah,
the gold standard is not to automate your entire PR function of your company. Right. It's not to automate your entire bookkeeping. Yes, you can hook up to the QuickBooks API and get Claude to do your bookkeeping for you. Should you do that? Absolutely not. Unless that's like literally you're DIYing every aspect of your business. Right. If you are just starting out, you have zero funds to hire people, absolutely use AI and automation. Yeah. But I truly believe that there should be an expert behind all of those agents.
Yeah, I love
so that. Someone who is an expert in that particular area gets to tell the AI what to do.
Okay.
What is the best way to onboard a new hire when systems are not fully documented yet?
First of all, I think it's really important to disclose that. Mm-hmm. Like really mentally prepare them of like, I always say, we're building the plane while we're flying it. Mm-hmm. Like you need to like just make sure that they understand that the systems are being developed. Mm-hmm. And then also like give them some ownership of it too, of like, hey, like we would really love your input. Mm-hmm. You're the one helping to implement these systems, or actually not implement, but like work within these developing systems. So make them part of it so that they are feeling like they've got some buy-in to like the improvement of it, instead of just being like the victim to these terrible systems that are being developed. I shouldn't say terrible, but it's very hard when you're in the systems that are being built and they're not defined yet and you're coming in as a new person. But also just having a lot of grace that this person it's not that they're set up to fail, but they're not set up to succeed. And so just having a lot of grace as you are going through that experience. And then I think just like a lot of communication, a lot of checkpoints, a really detailed onboarding plan, and just like a constant like check in and check out. Just like you're in it together kind of thing.
Yeah. So I'm curious, for a business owner who's kind of facing the scenario where they don't have things documented, they're thinking about like, where should I spend my time right now? Should I try to hire? Should I try to train? Where should they start?
Okay, so they're firefighting every day, and their motivation for hiring is they need to spend less time in the business, so they want to be delegating to somebody to try to take things off of their plate. Okay, got it. So this is a very common thing that I see, which is the owners are super maxed out, so they hire, and then they expect people to be able to like take things off of their plate right away. I think that works in certain scenarios, but even in like if you're bringing in, say, somebody who's at your same level of expertise and they don't necessarily need a ton of training and they can just kind of roll with it. But if you're hiring somebody to buy back your time and take on more of those lower level like administrative or operational tasks, and you don't actually have those systems documented, or even if you are an expert and you're like, oh, it's like, for an example, okay, A great example of this is one of my clients. She is transitioning into a new role. And so she is an expert in what she does in bookkeeping. And we do have an expert who is at her same level, but she's taking on client-specific workflows that are not documented. And so I would say, like circling back to like the original question of like what to do in that situation, like I think you just have to bear down and document your systems and just commit to doing it. That's the only way you're really truly going to get things off of your plate.
Right.
And there's a lot of different ways that you can do that will make it more efficient and easier for you. Like for example, for that client that I'm talking to, like she keeps procrastinating on it. So I'm like, let's sit down every day for an hour and I will help you document this process. And I just extract it from her and organize it and do it for her.
Right.
Which is an option, just depending on what you need.
I actually think that creating SOPs is a really great use case for AI.
Yes.
And especially using voice dictation with your AI tool is a lot easier because people have a hard time, I think, writing down what their process is. But if they can talk it out.
Yes.
So just open up your Claude, click on the microphone button, and word vomit everything that you do associated with a certain task. And the AI will organize it. You can even have it ask you like, hey, what am I missing? If I asked someone, my office manager, if I asked my admin to do this, where would things fall through the cracks?
Yeah.
I think that's, it's a great method for creating SOPs.
Yeah. I definitely leverage AI with helping to build out SOPs. I don't love the output of it without a lot of training. I have a pretty good skill of like how I teach other people how to create SOPs, and I just create that skill set.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, and you could probably help out with like how to actually make sure that it's like giving enough detail.
Yeah. That is pretty tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like it will be like step 1 is send the file here.
Yeah.
Step 2 is rename it accordingly. And it's like, okay, well, how do I rename it? What should the name be? And who do I send it to? And when do I send it? Like it doesn't quite get there.
Yeah.
But it's a lot of back and forth.
Yeah. I had one that was like, send the appropriate documents. And it's like, what are the appropriate documents? So you had to go through and like edit it and, give it some more information. But like the amount of time it used to take me to create an SOP to now is like, I can just get a lot more done, which is really helpful, especially when you have these clients who like need to hire urgently. Right. But I know Lindsay, our HR gal, if she was here, she'd be like, that's always the worst time to hire is out of like desperation and urgency. Right. Like really take your time, find the right person, make sure that they're set up for success as much as possible, which can feel sometimes impossible as a small business owner. I know I'm in that situation right now of just kind of figuring out what to do next. And it's hard. Like I'm documenting my processes, but it's very slow because it's the last thing that you have time to do when you're building a business.
Right. Yeah. I have found that connecting AI to your email, your calendar, and your project management tool, if you have one, is so nice for reducing that cognitive load of like what's fallen through the cracks. Yeah. Because you can say, go through my meeting notes, go through my email, and go through my calendar for the last 2 weeks. Figure out what did I commit to? Have I done those things? And if I haven't, add it as a task to my project management tool. Like that. I think I don't want to use AI to replace my thinking. I'm not going to use it necessarily every time to pick out what my action items are. Like I don't think it does the best job at that, but it is really good at find the things that I missed that I wouldn't have realized, or the opportunities in those conversations that maybe I didn't follow up on. Yeah.
One thing that I did recently is give it all of my time tracking reports and asked it like, where can I be working more efficiently? And like, what tasks am I doing that I could be delegating? And like, just asking it to like really give me like a solid breakdown of like where I'm spending my time. Cause that's what I'm trying to figure out with like who to bring on. Is like, okay, well, if I do bring somebody on, like, what do I immediately want them to take off?
Okay. That would be really interesting. If you have religiously used a project management tool for the last few months, it has so much data that you could mine to figure out where you could be doing things more efficiently, where you could be delegating.
Oh, okay. So something that we haven't talked about, which is the use case for SOPs, is for agents. So, which I've been really excited about because I'm like, I just feel like it's revitalizing SOPs a little bit.
Well, like agents are only as good as their context and their instruction and their memory. Agents, the same as humans, agents need SOPs. They need to know how to do a task. task.
Yes.
Especially because if you give like Claude a very broad task and you want it done the same way every time, it's not going to do it the same way every time. There's so much randomness that falls into the way an LLM works. It's going to figure out a different way to do it each time.
I don't like when it figures out what to do. Yeah. I'm like, just do what you're told.
Right. It will be like, oh, let me go reference your website for information on your packages. And I'm like, no, there's like literally a detailed guide in your memory of what all my packages are. Like, don't look on my website.
I had to tell it the other day. I was like, no, you're not doing it right. Like, I wasn't mean to it, but I was like kind of mean.
Well, actually,
I was like, is this wrong?
Something that really surprised me today is I had it put together a bio for me, and out of the, many, many months of using Claude, I realized the thing it doesn't know about me is that I'm a girl.
No way.
Which is really interesting to me. It's like, oh yeah, there are these fundamental things that it does not know. That's
so
actually where you can fall into a really bad trap with AI, which is that it's like in a legal scenario, if you were to ask it, can you write me a contract for this particular collaboration or partnership? It could maybe write you a contract, but it's lacking so much context. It's not protective. Like, what kind of entity are you? What kind of entity am I? Yeah. What happens when there are all these mini scenarios that it doesn't know about. So like if I said, oh, well, we're going to have a collaboration, but like I'm still going to hire you hourly for X, Y, and Z. And it's the same way if you told your lawyer and she's going to ask you those questions. AI is not going to ask you those questions.
Yeah, for sure. I love that.